on page 49. Give me 1 second so I can start my recording on YouTube and then upload my PowerPoint so you can see it. Okay, I got one and now I am getting my system. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. We're going to talk about the integumentary system. This is, get a little bigger, just a smidge bigger, so you can all see it. The integumentary system, it contains the skin and accessory organs. We're gonna call it accessory organs, so associated structures, which is the hair, the glands, and the nails, which are, when we think about it, they are all part of kind of like the skin. Like if you see, your nails and the hair on your skin, and some glands that are we're going to talk about here in a moment. All right, so if you can see my screen here, we're going to start talking about the skin anatomy. The skin is considered an organ because it does have, if you remember the structure of the human body, the that we talk about at the beginning of the chapter, it has different tissues that are working together to perform functions. The skin is the largest organ in the body. When you go to the doctor, typically they do an assessment on texture, temperature on the skin, because that gives the doctors a lot of information. The look of the skin, right? If it's pale, if it's purple, like not circulation and things like that, they can determine that certain dysfunctions just by looking at the skin. All right, so let's talk about the image that we have here in front of you. This is the anatomy of the skin. And of course, see, that makes sense because we are working on surgery. So when we go to surgery, yes, we have to cut through the skin. So that is important. So the main function of the skin, or one of the main functions of the skin, is to protect. They're also going to regulate, the skin also regulates the temperature and keeps moist air inside of the body. So those are the main functions of the skin. So right here we have the structure. If you go to page 50, this is where you're going to find something similar, but I think this one looks a lot easier to digest, right? So we see clearly all of the layers. So we're going to talk about 3 layers of the skin, which is the epidermis, the dermis or derma, as we have it here. So let me bring my cursor so we can talk about this. So the epidermis, which is the most outer layer of the skin, what we can see outside, right? Our arms and our skin in general, that will be the epidermis. And then we have the dermis, which is the deeper and thicker than the epidermis, as you can see here. Look at the dermis. So it's all this, while the dermis is just the top part with a little bit of connective here. The dermis, as you can see here, it does contain the majority of other structures. So we can see here arteries, we can see veins, we can see nerves, we can see sweat glands, we can hear hair follicles or hair bulbs. And then we have, I already said the sweat glands. Okay, and then below that, we have the hypodermis. And you can see the hypodermis is what we call subcutaneous layer. This is the deepest layer of the skin. And it provides the junction between the dermis and the muscle, or the next layer in your body, or the next organs. This pink that we see here on this particular one is a muscle. So the hypodermis is the connective, we're going to call it connective tissue. As you can see here, the hypodermis, these cells are fat cells or adipose tissue. They do look like that, except that they're a little bit bigger in the body. Well, I guess it depends on the state of our patient, right? But they do look exactly like this. They have different shapes. They're not circular. They're not specific shape. They A form. But that will be your the fat layer per se. Like we said before, the hair gland, the sebaceous gland, and the sweat glands, and of course the nails. This is not a nail area, but the nail will also be born in this part um, of the dermis. Some of the diseases that we are going to be looking into for inner surgeries and to identify some instruments, your book says skin cancers, psoriasis, eczema. Injuries to the skin include wounds and burns. When a patient has been severely burned, the skin must be replaced with a skin graft to prevent infection and fluid loss. The skin used for skin grafts is sometimes harvested from unburned parts of the same patient. So we do have instruments that perform this. We remove a we have two thicknesses of the skin depending on what we're trying to do to replace, for example, a burn patient that has lost that protection, or sometimes we have just accidents in which the skin has been lost. So we typically take it from the thighs or the flank to obtain a larger piece. And when we talk about instruments, I'm going to show you the instruments, the dermatome and the measure to explain how we use these instruments when it comes to the skin. So for this particular section, you need to know the three layers: the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. You also need to know the accessory organs of the integumentary system, which is the hair, the glands, and the nails. And what is the function of the integumentary system. Again, you can see your image on page 50 of your book, Figure 2.8. Every surgery, right? And if you were in surgical technology, then we also study how the skin regenerates, after surgery. Really, really interesting. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the next topic is the digestive system. The digestive system is super interesting. We're going to talk about the blood flow and the respiratory system. So I'm going to just bypass this real quick. I probably need to make this a little bit smaller so we can see the entire, oh, maybe not that small, right? How about that? There you go. Digestive system here. Well, I don't think I can get both the name. Well, we know it's a digestive system here. And the digestive system, like I told you earlier, or like I told you in class, this is considered general surgery. And general surgery is anything that happens in the digestive system, anything happening through this pretty much tube. The digestive system, the tube itself, it's about 30 feet long from, between the mouth, between the beginning of the system and the end of the system, which is the anus. The processes that happen in the digestive system is it digests and absorbs nutrients, digests food, absorbs nutrients, and eliminates waste. So those are the functions of the digestive system. So we eat something, we remove the nutrients from it, and then what is not used then is excreted. When we talk about the digestive system, we're also not specifically here, but microorganisms, the microbiome that is in your digestive system, it does have millions and millions of bacteria. And it's like different neighborhoods of bacteria that must live within the system, and it depends which part of the system that they're living in, whether or not a person is healthy. For example, have you heard about E. coli? Right? A lot of us have heard about E. coli, but guess what? E. coli, it should only be a part of the large intestine. It should never be in the stomach or the small intestine. And when we find it in these places, then it can create a disruption. And, we're going to start talking about all bacteria and pathogenic bacteria on the next chapter, so I'm not going to stop a lot on that. Some of the things that we can say about the digestive system is it does have enzymes to help with digestion. Some of the accessory organs for the digestive system are the teeth, the tongue, salivary glands, the liver, and the pancreas, which is going to be on the next slide. But this is super important because the enzymes that the saliva produces, that the liver produces, that the pancreas produces, they all help digest the food to then later break down into nutrients, so the macro nutrients that we talked about earlier, you know, the protein, the fat, and the carbohydrates. So digestion and absorption are the two major functions of the digestive system. Make sure you remember this too. You can highlight it here on the first paragraph of digestive system. Briefly, let's talk about the organs or of the tract. That will be the mouth and the mouth cavity, of course, and this is where the foods are obviously chewed and infused with saliva. Saliva has its own enzyme that starts helping particularly the carbohydrates. And we are moving to page 59. And then the next stop on the route, remember we did a travel through the heart. Now we're going to do a travel through the digestive system. So as it goes down to the pharynx, it is just going to transport the food from the mouth to the esophagus. And then the esophagus, which is this tube right here behind the trachea, is going to transport the food into the stomach. Now, when the stomach receives the food from the esophagus, this is where it's going to be mixed with, let's call it some juices. The book says some juices, gastric juices. And then this is where the digestion really begins. This digestive juice or gastric juice starts breaking down molecules that are bigger, like the protein molecules. Because, I mean, let's face it, when we eat like meat, for example, they said that we should chew at least 20 times. Who in the world chews meat for 20 times? It's probably 1, 2, 3, go, right? So imagine that that has to transfer into your blood. Well, the gastric juices help breaking down the reminder when we didn't chew properly. That's the job of the gastric juice. Now, the gastric juice, extremely lethal, let's put it that way, because it's capable of breaking down what we couldn't with the teeth. And the teeth are pretty potent. So, okay, so the stomach, when this receives, starts the digestion and then starts actually sending information in the mouth before we go. There's receptors that tell, for example, when we're eating something that's super greasy, it gives a signal to the liver and gallbladder to release, you know, to be prepared, because we need to release a little bit of bile to be able to infuse this fat to be able to for absorption. Okay, so once the stomach broke down all these particles of food now is going to start when it leaves the stomach, it's going to be called chyme. It's not longer food, it's not longer anything, it's like cold mix, and it's going to be called a chyme. It's going to send it, so this is the stomach, and it's going to send it to the duodenum here right behind this part of the intestine. And then in the duodenum, we do have a valve. And sometimes we have valve problems, and that's probably the repair that we have to do. We have stomach resections, we have gastric bypass, we have colon resection, we have, I'm going to talk about the accessory organs later, but anything that happens during all these 30 feet of tube could be part of general surgery for the digestive system. Okay, so food gets out of the stomach through the duodenum here, and then it's going to move into the small intestine. So this part here is the small intestine. The small intestine, the job is to break down that chyme. Remember, now it's called a chyme. And this is where the food get, or the nutrients get absorbed. You might want to highlight it on your book. Small intestine, major function, absorb nutrients. This part of the intestine is approximately 20 to 25 feet long. So if you extend it, I'm 5 feet, so it's gonna probably be, 5'3". Give me those three, right? So 5, and it's gonna be 5 times, between 4 and 5 times the length of my small intestine, if we were to extend it. So the nutrition, the absorption happens here of nutrients. And then the chyme is moved to the large intestine. So this is the small intestine, and then through here is going to start moving through the large intestine. So the large intestine has 3 parts. We may or may not need to know this, the ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon. In this part of the colon or large intestine, because a lot of people are confused with that. So when you said colon, we're talking about the large intestine. This is where the reabsorption of water happens. So in the small intestine, they don't take care of any fluids or any recapture of fluids. It does happen in the large intestine. So function of the large intestine, absorbed water. The electrolytes and the main, the majority of the fluids that we can recover. And then after this, after the water is reabsorbed here, then it goes through the rectum and then through the anus at the very end. So it's expelled now as feces. Now, this large intestine is about 6 feet long. So 20, 25, and this one is about 6, and plus whatever is here. So it depends on the person's size. Between, it's about around 30 total, give or take. They said that if we extend flat all the surface of the intestine, with all the layers that it has, because it does have a rugae, so like a zigzag type of environment there. So if we were to extend that flat, it will cover a tennis court for one individual. It's just so crazy. All right, so now let's talk about, so you need to know these parts, yeah, and the functions. The accessory organs of the digestive system are like we said before, the teeth, which is not here, of course, the tongue, salivary glands, and the liver and the pancreas. So the liver and the pancreas, they do release more enzymes to be able to process some nutrients. The teeth, of course, on your page 59, they're used to chew, and those are accessory organs. So if on the test I ask you what kind of organ is a teeth, you have to say accessory organ for the digestive system. The tongue is just going to help us pass the food over to the pharynx and the esophagus. And then, of course, like I said before, the salivary glands are going to excrete some enzymes to start working, lubricate this meal that we are having, particularly the carbs. Have you, for example, when you bite on a donut, and 100%, well, it's not 100% because it has oil, but carbohydrate. So you chew that donut 2 times and it's already dissolved. Yes or no? It's no longer a donut when it passes to your molars, right? You don't even need the molars to do this, because the salivary gland enzyme is going to take care of that. It's going to break it down immediately. And give it a try. Any carbohydrate that you take, that that's what is going to happen. And then food, this part right here, remember we talked about the duodenum. So let me show you here on the stomach here. So this is the stomach, and the duodenum is here right behind the large intestine. So this little curve is this curve right here, right? So this is the esophagus, the stomach, and the duodenum here. Well, midway into the duodenum, we do have a little canal here in which the bile from the gallbladder and the pancreas release their enzymes, so they can act on the reminder of the nutrients. So the liver is the largest internal organ, And this one, it has a lot of functions. The liver does have a lot of functions, but it says here what it matters to the GI tract or the gastrointestinal or the digestive system. It does produce a, a quarter of a liter, or between 1/4 of a liter to 1.5 liters of bile every day, every single day. So you have to think every time we eat something that is kind of really fatty, which is think about the donut. We're not thinking about it. We're just thinking it's like, flour and sugar or whatever it is. We never think about the fat that it was fried with, right? So it comes in. So the liver takes care of it via the gallbladder. And as as you can imagine, this part of the digestive organ, accessory organ, how many of you still have your gallbladder? How many of you don't have your gallbladder? Well, this is where the junction is. And then when we remove the gallbladder, we remove, from here all the way here. The gallbladder here looks separate, but it's actually attached to the liver on the bottom face. Inferiorly, we look at it, if it was like an umbrella, it's kind of like there. And then we have the pancreas. And then we're not going to talk about hormones right now, but the pancreas releases insulin and glucagon, which are, critical for how the sugar is transported, how these doors into the molecules. Remember, we said that the cell needs some food. Well, our primary energy driver will be pretty much the sugars. Our bodies run. They love it. The brain and the body, they loved, because it's a fast action energy. So it says the pancreas is a soft glandular organ with lobes. It plays an important role both in digestion by secreting pancreatic juice through the pancreatic duct, which will be this. This is a duct or tube into the duodenum, and in the regulation of the blood sugar, because it does secrete insulin and glucagon in the blood. That it goes more into when we talk about the endocrine system. Some of the digestive system surgeries that we might see in the OR, it says here, stomach and colon cancer, sigmoidoscopes. We do, has anybody had an endoscopy, colonoscopy? And then we have specific instruments for that. We also have cholangiograms, which is we do like an X-ray of the gallbladder to detect if it does have stones. What else do we have here? A small abdominal incision, colostomy. Sometimes people have bags after a surgical procedure a lot of the times. And anything that you can think of with this accessory organs, that how can they function. All right. This is going to count for your first hour of day 2. And when we resume into class, we are going to see the rest of the systems. Okay, so let me just get rid of my